comes down to computers communicating.
The information superhighway can be a confusing mix of on-ramps and off-ramps.
Bitcoin is worthless artificial gold.
Is it still rat poison?
Probably rat poison squared.
We need to get into the world of, okay, this is actually foundational technology.
What the Internet of Money does is it creates a single network which can do a microtransaction to a gigatransaction.
The Internet is going to be one of the major forces for reducing the role of government. The one thing that's missing, but that will soon be developed, is a reliable e-cash.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Final Settlement, a podcast from Onramp Media. On today's show, we speak with Sam Means, the founder of Wavlake, a music streaming app that seamlessly aligns incentives between creators and listeners through the power of open protocols. We explore the value for value model of content monetization, value-driven social graphs and discovery mechanisms, and the issues with existing centralized creator platforms as well as ticketing systems. Sam and Wavlake are innovators at the forefront of leveraging open protocols like Bitcoin, Lightning, and nostr to disrupt incumbent models by empowering both the user and the creator. And now, time for the show. Welcome back to Final Settlement. Today, we have on a guest, Sam Means from Wavlake. Very excited for this conversation. As mentioned in previous pods, on Final Settlement, we try to take a look at Bitcoin really more from a technological perspective as a piece of software, an open protocol that people are building on. And one great example of this sort of element of the Bitcoin thesis, if you will, is what the guys at Wavlake are building. And so really excited to have Sam on here and talk through everything that they've done, both on the music and streaming side, but also more recently a few announcements about disintermediating the ticketing space as well. So excited to get into that. But welcome, Sam. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Glad we could finally make it work after a few weeks moving stuff around. Here we are.
Yeah, I love it. I'm, like Brian said, very pumped for this conversation. We've been talking for a few years. I think back my days when I was at 1031 and some of the stuff you guys were doing, and always found a passion for personal passion in music and carrying, it's something that's very visceral. And when you get to that point, you kind of, you look at it differently than any other experience. And then because of that experience matters from like the money side. You start to think about it. One of the conversations we had early was back in the COVID days when people used to play online and you would like tip them over like Cash App. And I think now, even if you go to like a local restaurant or wherever, you can tip them if they put up the QR code. But it's like there has to be a better experience because people are really willing to actually put up dollars, hard-earned capital for this feeling. And it just felt right for like this new wave of open protocols and value transfer to be able to figure out a better structure that has historically been kind of, I think, and we'll talk about this for decades, if not longer, maybe it's over 100 years, where creators have kind of just been cut out from middlemen from their end value that they produce.
Yeah. It's a cycle that keeps happening. It's been happening. We say on calls, just in the music industry alone, it's been essentially 100 years that artists have somehow gotten the low end of the deal on everything, even dating back to how sheet music used to be sold. It just there's this thing that comes out that's a really cool connection from artist to fan, and then people just get in the way. And I think you need people to create those pathways, but hopefully with what we're working on here, we can act as a middleman, as the on-ramp, no pun intended, but we can build, as we build these things, other people can adapt those in many different ways on many different clients and completely separate from us completely, so it's exciting. It's exciting to actually be working on something that could potentially at least be the start of a new era for creators and artists.
At Onramp, we believe that Bitcoin will be the most important asset to own in the 21st century. Our multi-institution custody solution is the safest and most secure way to ensure that your Bitcoin remains in your and your family's possession for decades to come. Multi-institution custody maximizes security and minimizes counterparty risk. leveraging Bitcoin's native properties to eliminate single points of failure that have historically complicated Bitcoin ownership. Onramp provides peace of mind for your Bitcoin journey. For more information, check us out at onrampbitcoin.com. Yeah, maybe it would be helpful just to sort of take a step back and learn a little bit about, your background, how you got into the music business, but then also, how you found Bitcoin, and then sort of, secondarily to that, like, what were the problems that you identified in the existing sort of music industry, and how did Bitcoin ultimately help sort of map how you would attack those inefficiencies or issues that you had identified?
Yeah, it's a lot. I'll try not to be super long-winded here. I'll try to give the Cliff Notes version. So yeah, I mean, I've been in music ever since I could. I mean, I started playing guitar when I was like 9 or 10 or something, and got into the Beatles. And as soon as I found out you could be in a band, I started one with my friends, and that turned into going to a ton of concerts, and that turned into working for the venue, and that turned into being a concert promoter, and all the while still making music and figuring out ways to utilize those business elements into to benefit the band, and how that structure works. I mean, I even at one point in time was making websites and posters and all kinds of just doing graphic design for artists, and talking to the managers, and just figuring out the behind the scenes of all that stuff, how everything worked. And then ultimately got into a more successful band, got signed to a major label. It was something I knew from my DIY background probably wasn't a great idea, but it seemed like a good way to get some money that we would never have to pay back, and we could maybe use it to kickstart something. But what I didn't fully understand is the implications that truly come with that, which is you are stuck, like you are truly stuck at a certain point. So what ended up happening is that was not really a timely deal. The record industry started falling apart. That was in 2003, the beginning of 2004. A bunch of the major labels collapsed. I was on Elektra. That completely folded after 40 something years, and we got moved to Atlantic Records, and then we were stuck there in just this weird limbo period for a couple of years until we ultimately got dropped. This all connects at some point, I promise. So we, from that point forward, it just, I just sort of made a decision never to, or at least to try to never do anything like that again. I mean, certainly never do anything just for money. It was, it didn't feel great going into it, but it, when you're in your early 20s and you're broke and you're just trying to live your dream, sometimes you make mistakes. So, went on to be pretty DIY from that point. We started putting out our own records, started doing our own merchandise, tried out a lot of interesting experiments from that point, like 2005 into 2008 or 2009 or 2008, I guess. A few years of just trying stuff out, like giving out our music for free, just doing interesting things around touring. And fast forward from there, the band broke up. I started a merch company. I just sort of it rolled over into doing merch for my band to just doing merch for a bunch of bands. And then I got really heavily into e-commerce. And in 2014, I think, after a couple years of a friend of mine, some people may know him, Mike Jarmas, someone I knew from back in Arizona in middle school. He had been telling me about Bitcoin for a couple years, and I just saw an opportunity through, I think at the time it was BitPay connected to Shopify, and I was like, I'll just turn it on and see if anybody uses it. And that was my first interaction with Bitcoin, was just, can this be used in commerce? Will people use it? And it was more of an experiment. Like, I'll just turn this on and see if people use it, see what happens. Because I mean, it's really easy to set up an e-commerce store now. The credit card networks have changed so much in the last 16 years since I started the merch business that I have. But it's always been tough. I mean, you can, I've I've stopped using PayPal now completely because one time they froze up just a large amount of money for no reason with no explanation. And, you really see like how, at the mercy you are of a lot of these credit card companies and payment channels. So the idea of Bitcoin and being able to interact around the world essentially for free really was interesting to me. So I did that for a number of years. And then I heard about the Lightning Network, a few years later, skip ahead, 2017, I think, or 2018, somewhere around there, whenever that started picking up. Same thing. It was more so just seemed like an improvement on the utility of spending it. So I got into it, but I really had no idea how to participate. But I definitely started getting more interested in getting involved somehow. So I started going to some conferences and paying attention and spun up a couple nodes and did that whole thing. But it wasn't until 2021 when I discovered, through I think Marty's podcast, listening to Paul from Sphinx talk about how they were streaming money through this application, and that really connected all the dots for me. So then not only was I thinking about there's the e-commerce aspect of it, but then I started thinking, well, if you can stream this money, what could you do with music, and how can I help? This is now going to help with physical merchandise and physical exchange of goods, but also this could work digitally for streaming and start to potentially solve that problem that was really starting to ramp up at that point. So I spent the next couple years really just like going out on Twitter and trying to find people who might be interested in building something on Bitcoin and Lightning that would be heavily focused on music. So yeah, I mean, end of 2022 or something, I met Michael Ree, who's a co-founder of Wavlake. He started an early version of Wavlake before we officially teamed up. And I was his first beta tester, and we just kept in touch. And he tried it for a year and it didn't really work. And so we put our heads together and sort of change a bunch of things around. At that point it was kind of a paywall thing, and we decided to change it into a distribution channel, and that really opened the door for a lot of stuff and got us essentially to where we are today, which is, it kind of encapsulates all that stuff I just talked about. It like brings it into a place where now we're building something that could potentially be the starting point. The portal for everything is my current catchphrase I'm working on. It really is kind of the portal for everything for an artist. In the future, you come here, you distribute your digital music, you come here, you're live streaming, you're doing something that feels similar to Patreon, but without the pressure of the monthly subscription. You're releasing your music to multiple clients and social media and platforms, and maybe booking, selling tickets and events and all kinds of things. So building that social layer is what we're working on now, and starting to think about some of these bigger picture things. But that's how I got here.
It's amazing. It's cool. Like we mentioned in the top, we haven't chatted in a while, and hearing the progress, portal for everything and what that means, and we'll dig into it. Because it sounds exciting, and like, again, loving music, just knowing that these tools need to exist that are more kind of like rooted in what's needed from a participant side, but then also creator. But you said something early that I know you're very passionate about, and knows the creator, being stuck with the record label. I think it's really helpful to like understand where people get stuck and how that model's broken, because I think that'll help in just our side understanding, and anybody listening, and like how foundation, because I think most people inherently know a lot of the music industry has been kind of crazy, or even maybe entertainment in general, but like the intermediaries that like rent seek and all of that process, I think is helpful to understand better.
Yeah, I mean, it's so complicated, but I guess to simplify it as much as I can, is just things are always, when you're starting out or even just in the process, maybe you're a few years in, everything is just out of reach for the most part. It's like when I was a kid and I was growing up, it was touring. It was like get in a van and tour, so that seems easy, but you need a booking agent, or you're just going around and booking crappy shows that, aren't going to get paid or have people there. So you need a booking agent, but you can't get a booking agent until you have a record deal. And you can't get a record deal until this happens. And so everything is just like kind of one step ahead of you, unless you somehow do something and stumble into something that makes you just shiny enough that record label or that booking agent, or that, that person sees you and discovers you and gives you something. And now it just opens up all the other doors for you. But when that happens, you have to give up a lot. You have to give up, and what that looks like today is totally different from when I was a kid. But now it's like you have to battle through TikTok and build up a massive following on social media, so that because the label doesn't know how to develop the music industry doesn't really know how to develop artists anymore, because everything's changed so much in the last 10 to 15 years, and they just haven't kept up. The way they used to develop artists is very different. We don't have radio anymore, barely. There's no college radio. There's, or at least none that, it's making any kind of like significant impact around the world or the country. And so they don't know what to do. So now they just kind of put all that pressure on the artists, and that pulls them away from their what they should just be doing, is just making music. But now they're content creators, and they build up this following, and they do all the heavy lifting, and then a record label will come and like, hey, thanks for doing that, now you're ours, if you want to, here's a little bit of money and some promise of success. But it doesn't usually work out like that, so it's like most of you have to do something that you don't really want to do, so that you can keep doing the thing you want to do. That's kind of the deal. That's like the handshake, and it always feels kind of gross, so I think we're just trying to step in and help with this idea of, you still need a little bit of help. You do need someone to have this bridge. You might need a platform, you might need a service, but if you want to just have that connection straight with your fans, and that can be something that can now be monetized in a way that brings way more value to you and allows you to just be a regular musician or artist, or do the thing that you truly love doing at your pace. That's going to be really important for people, and they won't be as desperate to connect with these other avenues that typically you would have to do, because they're able to just live as artists now, because their fans are able to help them in a way that they've really never been able to do before. Because right now it's touring is still great, but it's becoming very difficult to tour, just because it's expensive. It's way too expensive, and a lot of the venues have been bought up by Live Nation and bigger companies, and so touring just doesn't exist the same way it did 20 years ago. And yeah, it's tough. It's really, we're sort of in this weird area between cycles of, the peak of digital streaming and sort of the peak of social media, and what is about to come next is the exciting part.
Yeah. I'm curious if you can sort of pull on that thread a bit of, being able to monetize your content or whatever you're creating in a way that was previously not possible without Bitcoin. Like this concept of value for folks that aren't necessarily familiar with what that means. Maybe it would be helpful to sort of break down, the actual logistics of what this model for monetization looks like for creators, and why it's arguably a step function improvement on what we just outlined in terms of, whether in sort of previous eras you had to get a record deal. Now there's social media, but that's not necessarily, a great way to monetize unless you have, millions of followers. Then maybe it's accretive to some sense. But what is Bitcoin and this value for value model unlock that was really not previously possible?
Yeah. So I guess the main difference now is, you're building up a following in a very specific place. This is why we like Nostr and why we integrated it so quickly. Even though it's still so new and people are very skeptical of it. We don't really want everybody coming to Wavlake. We want Wavlake to be just the place where the music gets pushed off, and now it's everywhere. We started building things to highlight how that stuff works, but not to get people to come there necessarily, but just as a showcase to show like, hey, this is what's possible here. Here's a music player, here's a mobile app, here's a nostr client. Now take all this stuff and you guys go do this and implement it in your stuff. So this is still somewhat conceptual, but it's like, if you build up a big following right now on, let's say on Wavlake, and Wavlake starts to suck, but whether you realize it or not, your social profile, soon we're sort of unifying this across the desktop and the mobile version, but ultimately you're just building up a following on Nostr, which is an open protocol where your identity can really live anywhere. And so whereas in the past you build that up on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube or whatever it is, and they start to roll out advertising, after a couple years, they get you hooked in and you've built up your following, and now you have to start interacting the way they want you to interact so that you're feeding those algorithms, and they're able to, manipulate that content however they want to. So next thing you know, you're essentially just creating stuff for a computer algorithm in hopes that it's going to feed it to the people that actually are following you. Here, I'm sure with Nostr and some other things, and there will be algorithms, but I guess the main difference is if they start to suck, you can just take your following wherever you want, So if Wavlake starts to become a bad social client, maybe it's still a great place to distribute your music, but maybe we're doing something that you don't like, and so you can just go to Fountain, or go to maybe even like a social media client, like not like a Primal or Damus, one of those things, and maybe they've now figured out a way that they have, a good way for them to implement music as a service, much like Fountain has. Like Fountain only did podcasts, but now the Wavlake catalog's on Fountain, and they've started adding features for music and playlists, and they're experimenting with some other things like the jukebox they did a couple months ago. So yeah, I think it's still such a fun developmental early stage, but I guess the idea is just you should own your internet identity, and you should be able to take that with you wherever you want. Maybe it's not even that one client's doing a bad job. Maybe it's just you make music and now you want to start making videos. It's really cool to just think that you just pop over to that video client and everyone's there with you. Whoever's using that video client, if they're following you on Wavlake, they're following you there too. So I think as it grows, that's going to be one of the main catalysts that drives people to it, is once they realize they can hop around the internet with this identity and everyone's there with them, so you're not having to start over when a platform starts to change the rules on you, or you do something wrong and you get kicked off of it or whatever. It's like that kind of stuff won't necessarily happen with this new idea. So yeah, we're very optimistic about it, but it's new, so a lot of people are very unsure. We are as well, but it's the best thing out there right now for us to utilize for the social elements and the engagement. And if we want this to work cross-platform, then it's the way to go right now.
I think I think one of the interesting dynamics is like on the artist side, right? Because generally things like this are two-sided. You need to have the listeners, but then to get the listeners, you need the artists, and they kind of come back. If you want to get paid, you need listeners or people that are going to use the app.
Yeah.
I've always thought like the artist side, this is like the one unique experience where the artist, it's natural because they want the relationship. They have a relationship with the end user and they can help move them. I think we saw this with like Kanye and Tidal, right? And there's different flavors of artists have followings that can really move in masses, individuals. That dynamic that exists today with the aggregators like Spotify and Apple, like understanding the, for that 1% or 3% that actually get paid anything there, or the rest, that long tail gets basically peanuts, if even peanuts, and why they would opt for a better experience or value transfer, I think is important to like why the structure starts to like move over where we could see growth.
Yeah. And it's, people talk about these things not having enough users yet, which is true. They don't. I think nostr has like 13,000 daily users or something, but you get, if the clients are there, if the clients are there and they can easily onboard fans and create that connection, and it's seamless, like Primal's really good for social, and you can buy Bitcoin there, and it just makes it really easy. We're doing that with our mobile app, like working on just making sure, like when we roll that out to the public, you can beta test it now on wavlake.com. But if, eventually when it's in the app stores and stuff, it's going to have to be a seamless experience so that someone discovers it and maybe they have a 500,000 fans or something, and they get on, and the current community on there starts doing their thing and being generous and discovering this music. And they're like, wow, this is really refreshing. This is cool. And they go out and they tell their actual fans, hey, this is a really great place to support me. I've been here for a week and I've already made X amount, and that feels really good. And I'm like communicating with people. Then if they bring over their people, that could move the needle overnight if you get the right person to do that. And if you're set up to scale quickly like that. So, it could be something like Wavlake. I certainly think social media is a great start, but I think it's sort of peaking, at this point, because we have everyone over from Twitter that's probably going to come, or at least the big boom for now, until there's a significant thing. I mean, so many people are talking about what needs to happen next in order to really move the needle there. And I think it's going to be something, or need to be something like music or gaming, or someplace that just where you have these people that can really change things overnight. You get a small handful of artists talking about the value of this new exchange that they're finding, and that could spark something huge that just starts compounding, snowballing down. And next thing you know, you could have, within a week, you could have multiples of what you have. I mean, much like what happened when Jack first started talking about it in December, like that type of thing can happen over and over and over again, but with much larger audiences.
Yeah, it's almost like the earliest adopters of these protocols, of these networks, whether it's nostr or just using Lightning for value streaming. It's like, the first people to adopt that are going to be largely Bitcoiners, people on Twitter who are just interested in the tech. And I think it's interesting in the sense that, I'm curious how we cross that chasm of whether it's an artist or, someone creating any form of content, getting them to recognize that this isn't just about Bitcoin. This is just a better product, or a better experience, a better way for you to monetize what you're creating, right? Like if we can get them to that point of understanding, then it starts to, inflect this flywheel of, they're not just adopting it because it's Bitcoin and they think Bitcoin is interesting. They're adopting it because it's a better product or service or experience, right? And they might not even know that Bitcoin is on the back end, but they
shouldn't know. They shouldn't have to
exactly.
know. Yeah, I mean, that's our main goal. Like we tried to barely even use the word Bitcoin because it's a turnoff, if anything, for most people. Yeah, I mean, I have 10 years of education on this, and luckily the education part is getting easier. Like things are definitely getting easier. It's so much more in the mainstream now than it was 10 years ago, obviously. So, you know, you don't need as much time to learn, but you really shouldn't have to learn anything at all. You don't have to learn how to use TikTok, really. You know, it's pretty seamless. You don't have to learn how to use Twitter. It's just, the idea is simple. You just get on. You don't have to know how, you know, so many people use this all the time. It's like, you don't have to know how HTTPS and email work. You know, they just work. You just have to, the barrier for entry is really low. And so that's what I think most of us are trying to do, especially with nostr and these new Bitcoin apps, is, you know, it has to be easy. The education piece, Roy from Breeze had a really cool article. I think it was called Orange Pilling is no longer working, or something like that, you know, and it's smart. He's right. There's only so far you can keep having this orange pill conversation with people. You know, it's like all of my friends and everybody knows that I like Bitcoin and I'm a dork and I've tried all these things, and, you know, eventually they'll figure out, and some have come over and whatever, but until there's something that like really they can just use that actually has a better function for them. And Wavelake's not even there. I mean, I have a ton of friends that are in bands. I work with a ton of musicians, and I haven't even brought this up yet. You know, they've caught wind of Wavlake, but it's just not ready yet. And I don't want to miss that opportunity to say like, hey, go check this out, and not have it be right, you know, and not have it work. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's just going to take some time, and it's hard because it's, you know, when you're working on stuff like this, it's hard to get funding. It's hard to get things going. Your resources are limited. You can only move so fast, and we have a million ideas and a ton of stuff we want to do. And we have to just really be patient and try to think through this out. You know, there's three of us at Wavlake, and I don't code anything, so I'm not much help there. I'm just sort of being obnoxious and hoping things can get done, and somehow magically they do between Michael and Josh. So, yeah, it's, you know, it's our job on this side of things to just really support the people that are building these projects and do the best that we can, and try to get things to work for us. If they're not working for us, they're definitely not going to work for anybody else. That's the main thing right now. It's like we have to get like 100% of the Bitcoin people have to be into Wavlake, or else no one's going to use it. Can't expect the mainstream to use it if you know, someone on this podcast can't figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's where like it gets a bad rap, but why price is the ultimate forcing function, because when I think about, you know, one of the forcing functions for Wavlake and the growth of that is like the artist moving over and taking over, like you referenced, really making a seismic change, even on the nostr side of things. But what takes an artist to move over, and they have to really go down the rabbit hole, and like, you know, one of the easiest ways to get them started on that is that price appreciation and the market sentiment and the awareness, and then the natural progression happens like that. And we've seen it happen time and time again every time we like go up. And so, but then the other part is like in the growth, and we see is like you have the price appreciation, but it's starting to come to like the vision of the utility maps to the price in parallel. So like price goes up and people like number go up, but then utility goes up in parallel. And generally it comes down to like, oh, which happens first? And I think it like happens together, right? Where like price goes up and then these services or platforms exist. And the one that, it seems like incredible when I was listening to today, you and Marty, on the pod discussing the ticketing side of things, because again, like on it's so perfect for music because there's a natural relationship that we keep anchoring to with the individual artist and the individual that transcends like the platform or anything related to like lock-in. So if they say, hey, do this or try this, they will just go naturally there because they have a tie to that artist. And I think about what's happening with the events and the ticket setup, and would love for you to kind of like tie that in, like how broken that is. But everybody knows when you go buy a ticket, you see all these crazy surcharges and all the craziness with like, you know, Taylor Swift and all these fees. And there's this indie guy that's kind of blown up, and you might know of him, Sam, just because being in music is Zach Bryan. And Zach Bryan had been following him for years, and he was in the Navy and put YouTube videos, and that's where I think he actually got big and got honorably discharged from the Navy to go pursue his passion, and blew up the past 2 years. And he loves his fans. He came from like small town Oklahoma, and would love for his fans to be able to see him at $15, $20. He literally can't, because every time he does it, they just completely crush it. And like when you guys were talking about this idea of like the social graph on nostr, and him and being able to map to the followers, and knowing that these people have actually exchanged value for listening, and then opening these tickets only up for these people. If he knew of that, he would 100% move over. I know without question, like we were able to get in touch with him, because that's all he's looking for, is like that experience. And especially as counterculture like grows, and that's like what music is, right? It's kind of like counterculture when it starts. It's like the opposite of what people are popular with. That's like, this is where that I could see it tying into, is just having a better relationship with your end user. And then artists start to learn that. And if you can monetize, it just all like works out downstream. So anyway, long-winded way of saying, like, you could see the path. It just obviously takes time with appreciation. The tools have to be built out.
Yeah. I mean, the ticket thing is so early. I mean, if Wavlake with music and all these, and nostr and all these things are early, I mean, this is like the idea of that being even remotely ready for someone like that it's going to take a lot of work, but the cool thing about it is that all those things are possible. Like it is completely possible. And it might, maybe he does catch wind of this at some point in time and just fund somebody to build that platform. And that's the cool thing. That's the other cool thing about it. It's like, it's there. Somebody go build it. Like, we don't have to do it in Wavlake. That was literally just like, we had a show in Nashville coming up and around the conference on the 25th. And we were just like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could just, this idea that we've had of artists being able to go live on Wavlake eventually and do an RSVP, it would be nice to know how many people are going to show up, or like you're booking a small tour somewhere or whatever, you just be able to throw up a ticket. It's just going to be very helpful for an artist. So we just did it as part of our new annual hackathon thing. Last year we did it. It was the mobile app. We did a proof of concept called Waveman, which was essentially turned into our mobile app. And this year it was the ticket. Our little hackathon will be like, can you guys get this done in a couple weeks? And they did, and it works, and it's really cool. And it actually, yeah, I mean, if you go back and listen to the TFTC episode that we did this week, we go into much more detail, but there's everything we need to be able to do for ticketing. We can do it. We can totally do it. We can limit and control the resale market. We can, like you said, identify your number one fans. I mean, I'm in a band. I put some shows up on sale a few years ago before COVID. No, they didn't end up happening because it killed the whole thing. But you try to do the thing. You try to like get a promo code that's just for your mailing list and just for the people that are really paying the most close attention to you, and you just can't. It ends up getting manipulated somehow. And I mentioned on a couple shows, I feel like this last couple of weeks, someone like Maggie Rogers is a great artist who's doing physical outlets to try to combat that a little bit. Like, you have to actually show up and buy a paper ticket at a retail, it's old school, but it helped back in the day. You'd have to go to the department store or record store or something and get your ticket for the show, which scalping was still a problem then, but it definitely helped. Like, there weren't bots, and that type of thing that we see now. So yeah, I mean, we're really excited. I don't know where, that's the fun part of building on Bitcoin and Lightning and nostr and living in this world right now is it's really open, how this stuff ends up integrating with Wavlake and through other projects and events. I don't know. We'll see how it shakes out, but we're definitely very excited to be able to be working on ticketing right now, because we didn't think we would be when we first launched in January of last year. Nostr was very barely on our radar, just kind of coming into focus, and had no idea what we could do with it. And now, fast forwarding just barely a year later, it's cool to be able to start. Now we have a mobile app, and now we're working on ticketing, and our next integration of this is coming out in a couple of weeks. Will be like way more of a social layer, and all these things we just didn't think we'd be able to do for years. We're suddenly able to do relatively quickly.
Whether you're a seasoned Bitcoiner or brand new to the asset class, Onramp provides a best-in-class private client experience to ensure that your Bitcoin remains accessible, secure, and in your control. You'll have a dedicated advisor to guide you every step of the way. If you want to meet in person, we now have Onramp branches in New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Nashville, Dallas, Austin, Houston, Los Angeles, and Denver, with more on the way. Check out onrampbitcoin.com/branches to learn more and get connected with our team. Yeah, the ticketing stuff is really fascinating to me because, if you think of, one, it's just complementary to what you're already doing in sort of the music space in terms of streaming. But to me, it's even more tangible is the wrong word, but it's like, people who stream music on Apple or Spotify, like most of the normie crowd is like pretty pleased with that experience, I would presume, right? Whereas like with ticketing, I think everyone can agree like the ticketing experience is pretty bad and has gotten worse over the years.
Yeah,
it's just the fees that feel prohibitive, or it's just the the various platforms, the lock-in, the whatever it may be. I think it's something that people will appreciate. The normal person who doesn't understand Bitcoin will appreciate a different method of ticketing where they're actually getting the ticket directly from the artist. It is like a very interesting concept. So I'd be curious if you could walk through maybe a little bit more detail of like how logistically the Ticketbot in particular works, and then like what you envision can be built on top of it, because obviously it's very early stage and sort of a prototype MVP type release, but just where do you envision this going? And that would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the dev at Wavlake, so I can't get too nerdy here, but I'll try to just walk through the normie explanation of this. Yeah, I mean, at its simplest form, I mean, you're on the Wavlake app. Go download the Wavlake app, and you're on nostr. You may not realize it. We're going to make it even more so that you don't really have to think about that right now. There's language in there that's pretty technical and dorky. So, and most people that are using that app are familiar with nostr. But what's happening is you are cryptographically signing into a nostr client. There's a listing that is there's an event NIP, I guess, that is universal for all clients that read this calendar event type that's happening. It was really cool because we listed this, and then I think it was Coracle or one of the other things at one point in time implemented a calendar for nostr events, and it just automatically populated there, which was really cool. That was just a very early peek at how this could work cross client. But today, the way it works is you just, you go into Wavlake, you see an event listing, you click on it. We made this a total value for value thing. So there's a 1 sat minimum just to state that there is some purchase price. You can pay 1 sat, you can pay 1 million sats, you can do whatever you want. That money's getting distributed to the artists that are performing on the 25th of July in Nashville. But then what happens is you're essentially signing it with your nostr identity within the app. On your social client, let's say you're using Primal or Damus, you're going to get a DM from the Ticketbot that gives you your information. Your ticket will also live within Wavlake, but you'll get in your DMs, you'll get all your ticket information. And when you get to the door, there's a QR code. It's very similar to how most will call ticketing works today. Scan a QR code and verify that you're there. Where we see it going, I mean, just like a couple cool features. You want to sell that ticket, someone else has to essentially sign it. And so it's, you can kind of do that now with Ticketmaster. I think they have a thing where it can only go from Ticketmaster app to Ticketmaster app if you want to sell it. Unless, of course, you're selling it on the secondary market, which I think Ticketmaster owns, and they get to double dip on or one of the secondary markets. But in the future, let's say this is my event and it's very popular, and I know the show's going to sell out, and I know that there's going to be a secondary market. I could say, hey, that's cool. You can sell this ticket to your friend, or you can give it to your brother or something, and they can sign off on the other side. But if you resell it, you can only resell it for 5% above the face value of the ticket. You can't exceed that. You could put a limit on it, or you could say, you could sell it for whatever you want, but when that exchange happens, I become part of the split. So you have to give me 50% of whatever you sell, the overage, or even the future, you buy a ticket and everybody gets paid the second that ticket is purchased. So you buy a ticket for my show and I get paid and my drummer gets paid and the promoter gets paid and everybody who's involved is part of some sort of instant settled split that's set up when the ticket's created. There's a lot of ways it could go, but it just solves, sorry, something's beeping here. Good old New York. There's a lot of things that can happen. That's just really the start. That's the first version of this, and what we're focused on is just we want people to be able to create tickets from within Wavlake for small independent events. Sorry.
All good.
Brian's in New York as well, and we have work calls, and it goes off, and every time I hear it, it's just so foreign to me. I'm thinking that he still has like a landline that's calling, like, and then I'm expecting like half people won't even know what I'm about to say. Is like I'm expecting like the audio recording to pick up. It's like, this is Brian. Please leave a message at.
Yeah, it's there's no way to mute this thing. If you've ever been in an apartment with a door buzzer. Luckily, it's somewhat it's not totally obnoxious, but
Sam, you just made me think like how amazing. One of the ideas with this is like, so there's the angle of the resale and the programmatic nature of you get the ticket and the downstream effects, which is I think important. But thinking about like even ahead of it, imagine that graph. And I'm not technical, but I would imagine just in the same perspective, like somebody buys a ticket, they sell it, you can figure out the split in the relationship with the buyers of the relationship with the followers and zaps with an artist, where you can actually incentivize the amount of value for value pre any merch or ticketing coming out, because you can basically say if you have X, whether it's sats or number of sats, then you can actually maybe get ahead of it or a discount on the tickets, or even have the ability. So then you actually keep the bots from ever being able to buy, and you influence or incentivize your artists or your fans to like participate, when historically it's like, you like create a better experience for everyone.
Yeah, you have a way better super fan group or fan club or whatever you want to call it. It's like right now the way people do that are through something like Patreon, where it's like, hey, if you are like extra and you spend $8 a month, I'll give you all this extra stuff, and then you'll have early access to tours and music and stuff. But it's just so hard to keep up with that, because you have to keep up with this subscriber base, and you have to keep pushing out the content that whatever it was you promised to give them in order for that to come in. You have to maintain that. It's really difficult. Or like a Kickstarter thing, that was a big thing for a while with artists, where if they wanted to make a record, they may put it up on Kickstarter, and then they'd have to come up with a bunch of all these different rewards and things in order to get someone to pledge for the campaign, and that's just so hard to do and keep up with. So yeah, that concept, that's what we're working on next, which will be great for ticketing. It'll be great for merchandise. It'll be great just for really anything. You'll be able to see your top fans and identify them in Wavlake or other places, and just see like, hey, these are my top 100 supporters. They get first access to everything, or they only get access to these things. So it kind of creates or allows you to like move off something like Patreon, because now you just have them, like the supporters. They just are your supporters naturally because they've supported you. They've now fallen into a certain category. And maybe they did that through streaming your music. Maybe they did that while you were on a live stream. Maybe they did that by buying one of your tickets. Maybe they purchased merch through this, which we also want to get into at some point in time soon. You could really set those boundaries. I mean, it's really just about implementing it into the back end of Wavlake, just being able to activate those things and organize these events in a way that show who did what, when, and you can reward them however you'd like, you know.
In your mind, would those sort of functions be like artist view only, if you will, or would that be like, if I'm a fan or a listener, I can go see those leaderboards and see like, I'm number 5. I've zapped the fifth most zaps to this song. I've bought 2 shirts. I've gone to 5 events, because that's an interesting dynamic too, where it's like you could almost gamify fandom to an extent.
Yeah, I mean, it could go either way, and I think that's a choice that the artist could make, and that's the choice that the fan could make. Maybe I'm super privacy focused and I don't want to be on the leaderboard. That's cool. You don't have to be. You can opt out. But maybe you do want to be. That's a big thing that can really, like think about like back in the day with MySpace and stuff. The top 8, that was a big deal when you were a fan of a band. You wanted to be in their top 8, and that was just a manual process that they. Maybe they just arbitrarily identified, or through whatever, decided you were gonna be there, But there's so many ways to gamify this and ways for fans to interact. I mean, even just the simple act of commenting or boosting. I mean, we see that with like the Boostagram or Boost. I forget the name on nostr, where it's like the boost, the Zap advertising, Zapvertising was like an early experiment, which was like, I'm going to be the highest zap and I'm going to put a link to my thing in the zap comment, so that when it shows up, if it's sorted by top zaps, then my advertisement, you're kind of spamming a comment, but through support. So it's sort of warranted, and that's really what this could be too. For, it's like, if I'm a fan and I want recognition from the artist that I'm a supporter, then I'm going to zap a lot and with frequency or depth or whatever. That's the cool thing, is there's just going to be so many different ways to interact with support financially, or even just interacting through communicating and participating in things, because it's all connected. So if you've connected through Wavlake or Fountain or one of these other things, and you want to see a live show, it'll be there. If you want to buy merch, it'll be there. If you want to just listen to a new track or watch a song get written, you can do all of that there.
Very cool. You mentioned earlier that you're sort of, you obviously are well networked in the music industry, and at Current, you're sort of like hesitant to like push this on folks and say, hey, go use this. 2-part question. Like, I'm curious, at one point, will you be comfortable doing so? Being like, okay, what do you need to see for it to be like ready state for you to say, to get a little bit more aggressive about being like, this is a better way to monetize your content? And then also sort of second part to that is like, from the artist side, it's like, how do you incentivize them to see that vision? When that conversation does happen, like, what is the carrot to say, this is actually a better way to go about things?
It's getting really close. So, I mean, on the artist side, it's pretty much there. I mean, that was the thing we built first, was just making sure the upload process felt incredibly similar to Bandcamp or something like that. That's essentially what we've done there, and it's working. We have about 700 artists on there. We have very few customer service issues. Most people can get tracks set up pretty simply. So that part's done. The part that was tough was in, like July, when Ainsley Costello, who didn't know anything about Bitcoin, her dad heard me talking at Bitcoin Park in Nashville, and a few days later uploaded his daughter's music, and she was like, cool, where do I send my fans? And there just really wasn't a great place for that. Like, I could say like wavlake.com, but can't buy Bitcoin there. It's like, do you have to know what a lightning wallet? I mean, there's just so many complications there from the fan side. So that's why we expedited the mobile app. And the things we're finishing up within the mobile app are really the final, well, not the final stage, but what's going to start getting me there, where I'll start pushing it, to certain levels of friends and artists that I'm I work with and just see how they react and how their fans react. Like I want to be real incremental with it, but the artist they'll get on and they'll see it, because we've seen that already. Artists get on, they find out very quickly, this is really cool. I'm getting zapped. I'm getting, people are talking to me, people are discovering my music. This has never happened before. Spotify's an abyss. All these other places are just so hard for me to get noticed at this level. But the mobile app is still in beta. So like it's going to take that. We have to get it into the app stores. The mobile app needs to have a wallet in it, which we're about to finish that. And I really want there to be some sort of listen to earn implementation, so you don't have to buy any Bitcoin. You could just get in there, and we have some really cool ideas that will probably be the next big thing that people find out about, is a version of that, a concept of that will ultimately roll into the app as well. And once that happens, once it's like truly frictionless for the artist and the fan, then we'll start pushing more to the mainstream.
I love that. You said something on Marty's pod that really resonated, and I think resonates with a lot of people building this space, is that the rules have changed. And I think that's important, because a lot of these concepts, while they're foreign and they seem so far-fetched, the reality is, like, once you really get them and you get the background and your background in having asymmetric information in the music industry and knowing how broken it is, and then knowing Bitcoin, right? Those are two disparate themes, and once you combine them together, it's like, oh, I can see like how the game has changed, and it doesn't go back in. And it's just fascinating to think about what you're describing. And it's like when an artist goes in there and they have their existing relationship with whatever provider and all the things that they've been told is all the tools you have. And then you see another one, it's just like, oh, you don't put that back in the box. It's just the game has changed, and now it's just a matter of time until everybody else wakes up and realizes it.
Yeah, because it's so easy. It's just, for the artist, it's just another place to upload your music. There's so much already. It's like it's not that big of an ask to just be like, I don't know, dude, go throw up a track here, and try it out. So it's actually pretty easy to get them. That's sort of the easy part, because they're just used to uploading music everywhere, just because that's what it is. It's like just spray everywhere and hope that something happens, but it's that fan side. They're going to need their music to be there. They're going to need to be the music that they want to listen to is going to have to get there. And that's a big ask. It's like, no one's going to leave Spotify for Wavlake. No one's going to leave Apple Music right now for Wavlake. They may supplement we've been asking people, or we've seen out there, it's like, hey, what are you listening to? And it's like 90% other platforms, 10% Wavlake. And it's like, that's awesome. I'll take that. It's like, it's kind of cool to just be a part of someone's, and I still use traditional platforms too. I can't listen to the Beatles on Wavlake. So yeah, it's going to take some time, but there's, even if it takes a long time to get like legacy artists onto an idea like this, which I think it'll ramp up a lot faster than we saw before, because the idea isn't really that foreign. It's really pretty similar to what we have going on now. It's just better for the artist financially. So it'll be a lot easier to sell. But even just to build a robust independent music library like SoundCloud did, or like Bandcamp did, those are both very highly successful companies that had very strong communities and started careers of a lot of artists, and are still existing and as far as I know, profitable today, so I have a lot of hope just for getting to that point, and then implementing, seeing how these other things that those things don't have can really change the trajectory of where we go from there, because you can't buy tickets, you can't do live streams, you can't do all these things with these other music platforms, and you certainly can't do them in a way where it's all sort of unified in one place. It's like, you can buy merch on Spotify, but it has to be through this other thing. You can see ticket listings on somewhere else, but it's fed in through some other company, so yeah, I think it's going to be really great.
Yeah, your music portal for everything. I liked that early in the call, and like, it actually works, right? Like, you have this ubiquitous form of money that settles instantly and for a low cost, and you could do all these different things all in the same place, and can sort of create this music centric hub with just a much better model where there aren't middlemen extracting rent from various elements of it.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm curious on the music side, the lock in, because you referenced you still go into Spotify like everyone does, and is there is there any lock in that it occurs on a larger scale, or is it pretty like anybody that's on Spotify can go, they just have to opt in to like uploading their music to Wavlake?
Yeah, I mean there could be I could see a world in the not too distant future where you're uploading through a different service like DistroKid or the Orchard or one of the or TuneCore or one of these distribution platforms where you're selecting all the things that you're uploading to. It's like, hey, I upload my music through TuneCore and it tells me I'm distributing to 65 different things, this is all open, so we could partner up with an existing distribution Onramp and say, hey, connect this here and this could be one of your options, and that could be a way that we onboard a bunch of people without anyone even realizing what it is whatsoever. It's just another box that gets checked, and funds start coming in a very different way. And we would have to interact with something like that differently than you would if it was a one-to-one transaction. But there's so many ways to bring people into this.
Yeah, that's a fascinating concept because you reference how the artists get on, or the fans asking for it, and we talk about price and adoption growing. As adoption grows, the overlap becomes greater with the fan and the holder of Bitcoin or whatever Bitcoiner or whatever, however we refer to folks. I think we start to change as money just becomes ubiquitous. But point being is, when we launched this podcast a year ago, the only reason we got on Fountain was because everybody in Twitter DM comments were saying like, are you on Fountain? Are you on Fountain? And they kept tagging, and then Fountain reached out and we're like, okay, well, it's just another app. And then it's just like, oh, these sats keep like growing, and there's like hundreds of dollars sitting in this thing that we don't like, and it eventually gets to a certain point, you get enough zaps, enough incentive baked into that, then you're like, wait, this is actually real money. And so you could see like that distribution channel like opening based on either partnerships or partnerships coupled with just like the fans asking for it at a fever pace.
Yeah, it's just going to take experimenting from artists. It's going to take some time. It's even right now on Fountain. I mean, there's a pretty robust amount of listeners and podcasts on Fountain, but that's still very small. It's evident now. You could look at the supporters on Fountain and you can see like a lot of times it's even a small group of people that are sort of propping that show up. And that's the thing works the same. You could say the same thing for Wavlake. It's a very, comparatively, it's an incredibly small market right now, so, but that's the thing is we do have a better solution here, us and Fountain and all these other clients and nostr. Like it is actually a better system. And that's typically, that kind of thing typically tends to cut through, it may not be this exact version. I think Jesse from Amboss tweeted, or maybe it was on nostr a couple months ago, but I liked it. And it was like, Lightning may not be the thing, but it's definitely going to be the thing to the thing that gets us to the thing. And that might be nostr, it might be Lightning, it might be, this eCash and these Fediments and all these other things are sort of becoming very interesting. There's a lot of stuff popping up. Like this technology is moving very quickly. And it's so exciting to be able to participate in it, but it's also nerve-wracking because it's like happening so fast and you have all these options, and it's tough to have the patience to pick the right one and not like get too deep, before the user base is there.
Not to get too in the weeds in the business model, but like you just made me think of this whole notion of people are going to need support navigating this, right? Like you referenced the different ways artists can adopt these things. And it's just like, well, you can do X, Y, and Z to optimize for revenue growth. And it's like, are they going to have to do it? Or somebody's going to need to be able to provide them with the different, like segments or tiers, or be able to like shepherd them through until it's just, I don't know what the end state looks like, but you can imagine the experience that we're describing is from anybody that has a relationship, from produces some kind of like, whether it's a fitness instructor that has a following or artist, where they want to do something that requires digital value, like scarce value, to provably show that it's not bots trying to extract rent. And you can imagine that like whole experience needs cultivating and like creation around it, to be able to like create like the ticketing thing is a good example of, imagine you're an artist or somebody that does something online and you want to open an event up to your community, but you don't want people to like go and, basically corner the market on whatever that opportunity is. And so you can imagine going to something like a Wavlake or somebody that creates something like this, and to open up, this is how you can effectively do it. So you can monetize it while also giving your fans the best experience. And that seems like a very like interesting opportunity. Have you guys thought about like whether it's on the music side or that in general, or not really?
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately the goal. I mean, we want people to be able to essentially activate the top percentage of their audience in every way possible. And we want to support that idea, whether that's music or a fitness instructor or a recipe website or whatever. It's anytime I explain this concept of just like giving your value to somebody as you consume the thing that's giving value to you, this value for value idea, everyone's like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. How do I do that? It's like, you don't want it. I don't want a New York Times subscription because my friend sent me one link, to read an article. It's so dumb. Like, it's just so dumb. And you explain to someone like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if like I sent you this link and you could just read it and pay 13 cents and then never pay New York Times anything ever again? Like, wouldn't that be great? Or like if you read it every single day, you could give them that $14 over the course of a month, or whatever it is. There's no doubt in my mind that this is going to be the next thing everywhere. That's how we do everything. You have a water bill. You don't just pay for like a water subscription. You don't pay like $2,000 a month just to have access to as much water as you want. You pay for the water that you consume. You pay for the gas that you consume and the electricity you consume. And that's how most things work. It's really strange, this idea of paying like a monthly fee for unlimited access to stuff you could never in a million years conceivably listen to. I mean, I have my like main playlist on Spotify has like 8 days of music on it. I'm never going to listen to that like in one sitting, It's like half the time I hit shuffle, it just plays the same 14 songs anyway. So yeah, I think people are going to be incredibly receptive to this as it starts moving more into the mainstream. It's just about building these things and pushing through, and like I said, supporting all of these things is the best that you can. Someone had a thread, I think it was, I can't remember who it was. Someone had a thread yesterday on Twitter about just like the early days generosity of Bitcoin and how, like the pizza story or whatever, like any story from that era, or like the first in 2014, someone buying 5 t-shirts on my merch company. It's, paying, looking back and laughing at that transaction, how much it is now. But that's what needs to happen. Like, some people have to be building things. People have to be supporting those builders, even if it's not perfect yet. And that's how we're going to get to the next step. That's how this thing has gotten us from A to B and B to C and C to D. Just keep supporting. That's what I love most about the bear markets, is that's when everyone's just building the coolest stuff. And you get in this new cycle and you get to see that get put to use. And every single time that happens, the stuff that gets built becomes more interesting and more mainstream focused. And it's not just about wallets or exchanges or, infrastructure and mining and all these things. Now it's starting to be fun stuff like music and blogging and video and social media and these things that people people use daily. I feel like I got way off track there on that question, but yeah.
No, that's exactly right, because it furthers that idea of like the convergence between utility and value, because as the utility becomes more relevant and built out, the value increases to the point where people want to accept Bitcoin. Because right now, right, it's like you mentioned, you can't really bring it up or it doesn't come up. But imagine a state where the tools are built out to a point, at the same time somebody's saying, hey, I actually want to receive Bitcoin. And those two meet in parallel, like in this convergence where like that everything just kind of like, runs even faster, because now people have the tools coupled with they want a better form of money to receive, which both don't exist today.
Yeah, and people are coming around to that, and these cycles prove that, because you see these things come and go, but then Bitcoin sticks around and stays stable actually comparatively to all these other things. And I think people are starting to actually notice that, it's like, oh, everyone said this thing was the thing, but then it just, where'd it go? Like my cousin told me to buy this shitcoin and I lost $1,500. My friend told me to buy Bitcoin and like I would have made, it's, if you're thinking about it from that mindset, and then once you realize that happens, you start seeing the utility and you start learning about that. And that's how we all got here. It's like it ultimately starts with the price and ends with the utility and what this can do to really fix our just infrastructure of how we live. But I think we're really close, because I think it is a lot of the nonsense that's attached to it that makes those conversations difficult to have, and just regular mainstream life, I think, are starting to get easier, because people are starting to realize like, oh, this isn't a scam. This isn't, the oceans haven't boiled yet. I don't know. Somebody said this was going to happen and it didn't happen. So maybe that wasn't true. Maybe I should actually look into it. So yeah, I don't know. I think, I think I was sort of hopeful for this cycle that we might get more mainstream adoption, but I'm starting to suspect it might take, one more before we really go into like hyperdrive with that. But the more time, the better, because it just allows for more of this stuff to get built and more of the kinks to get worked out.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we're still very nascent and early in terms of sort of this more utility focused adoption. Maybe this cycle is the digital gold thesis, institutional adoption that's occurring more near term. But no, that's all really great thoughts in there in terms of, it's better money, it's better tools, it's open systems, interoperable systems, so people can continue to iterate and build on these things. It's been really cool to see what you guys have built, and excited for the future as well. Michael, did you have anything else, or you want to maybe wrap it up?
No, this has been great, Sam. Appreciate you coming on. I'm sure you're excited too. I was thinking about like the incumbents; they'll more than likely miss all of this. It's not in their best interest to adopt any of the things talking, and there's some poetic justice and kind of all of it.
That's what I'm hoping for. The comeuppance for the artists. Yeah, that'll be really cool to see.
Awesome. Well,
and then Nashville, maybe if you want to just plug Nashville, because
Yeah, if you're going to be in Nashville, July 25th, we're doing a show, sort of a celebration. That the Bitcoin conference is really like a milestone place for us. It's where I met Michael in person, and sort of a lot of this stuff came to be. So in celebration of that, it's a music town, so it makes perfect sense. We're throwing a concert with Joe Martin and Ainsley Costello and Just Loud and the Higher Low, and the Satoshi Nakamoto sort of live karaoke type thing, which has been at a few of these conferences if you ever seen that. July 25th at the Vinyl Lounge in Nashville. Go download the Wavlake app. You can go to app.wavlake.com, or you can just look for the little app logos on wavlake.com and try it out. The mobile app's pretty cool. We're doing some updates in the next couple of weeks that are going to make it even cooler. And you can RSVP for the event there and try out this Ticketbot thing and let us know what you think.
And share with an artist if you have an artist in your network. Definitely shill it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people don't. I mean, the app is like I said, it's in beta, so it's pretty under the radar. But even a lot of people that are familiar with Wavlake don't realize we have an app. So if you're one of those people, go download it and show your friends, because it is actually like I showed my sister and she's like, oh, this is cool. I didn't know this was like that. I thought it was, dorkier. So we're getting there. It's starting to get more familiar for the listener too.
Love it.
Well, go download the app, share it with friends, family, creators. Sam, thanks again. Really appreciate you coming on. It was a great convo, and hopefully we can have you again.
Yeah, awesome.
Down the line.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. See you guys in
Sam.
a few weeks. Later. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the show. If you found the information valuable, please share the episode with a friend or leave a rating on your favorite podcast app. All the links we discussed in today's show will be in the show notes inside your podcast app. Before we finish, a quick reminder that Onramp Media is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and nothing should be construed as investment or legal advice. Regardless of where you are on your Bitcoin journey, we'd love to hear from you. Visit onrampbitcoin.com/contact to schedule a consultation with one of our private client advisors.